My shop is in the down below, on the periphery of all other shops you go to. No one finds my shop by accident. There has to be intention. Conscious, unconscious, it doesn't matter what type of attention. What matters is that you have something you need to get rid of, and something I want. Your haunted possessions. You might not know they're haunted on the surface, but maybe you've been noticing that your utensil drawer keeps sliding open in the night. Maybe you've noticed how the floorboards creak with concrete-heavy steps in the midnight hours. Perhaps you've seen the face of a corpse in the bathroom mirror, sagging like a pumpkin left to rot in the sun. You're finding my store is not made with a conscious awareness. It never is. It's like that by design. I compare it to the beck and call of Skull and Haiti chasing each other's tails in the bruised nebulas of a starlit sky. Instinctual might be a good word for it. Years ago, when my shop first opened, a pot-bellied gentleman in his 40s stumbled in through my glass doors. My shop is small, crammed with items, less so at the time. I looked up as the doorbell rattled. The man had a sweat-soaked suit and kept dabbing his forehead. They usually come like this, confused, muttering to themselves. Not usually so sweaty, though. He held a rattling wooden frame with intricate spoons from all manner of countries pinched at the handles. I saw her behind him immediately. He was unaware of her presence. A festering thing. She was cloyed and hunched over, spines crossed in jagged arcs along her back like an iguana's tail. Her eyes bulged from the wrinkled lips of her sockets, like overripe tomatoes ready to burst. The pupils were swollen, protruding discs that jutted around, glazing across the room. Her skin sagged and dropped from her body. She held an air of worry about her. I watched her eyes dart to the spoon collection more than once. Her anchor item. Ah, a malicious old one. What was she to you? I inquired.
To me,
His eyes flicked down to the spoon collection. He looked like a man lost in a dream.
My mother.
I clicked my tongue in response. A matronly devil. When you're a spiteful hag, even to your own kin, it tends to break your form down when you die. If you have a stabbing exterior in life, I pointed past him, towards her rigid spines. You get to have one in death, too. He turned his head to look behind him groggily. If he saw her, his eyes didn't show it. I flicked my fingers in front of his eyes. 1,000. Cash. He set the spoon collection on the counter. His movement was dreamlike. He rifled through his wallet and slapped $100 bills on the counter. They always come with exact change, almost like they knew what I'd charge before they came. I'm not a monster. 1,000 is fair for my service. At least I think so. As he stumbled away, his mother, hunched and hissing, eyed his departure. She turned to follow him, but the pull of her anchor object held her prisoner. She scratched elongated nails against invisible walls. He slipped through the door. He'd never find his way back. He'd never remember this happened. He'd just be $1,000 light, and he'd be able to sleep again. I touched the anchor object while she was distracted, thumbing over each spoon.
David, come back, you coward! Leaving your own mother behind! How cruel! How terrible a son!
Her words came through gritty, buried in gravel. He can't hear you, I said aloud, returning my eyes to the spoon collection, flipping over a gold-wrapped spoon with the Egyptian flag embossed in the handle. She whipped around. I could feel those bulging eyes center on me.
You,
she said, venomous. Me. I retorted. She rushed forward on all fours, reptilian, spikes flaring out like porcupine quills from all across her shrunken frame. I waggled my finger. Not one step closer, or I dissolve your anchor point in fluoroanimatic acid. The Teflon tub was already open below the counter, filled halfway with the super acid. One of her eyes lazily wandered up to the ceiling. The other examined the collection in my hand. I saw a flicker of understanding across her face. Her smell was decidedly unwelcome. Old cough tablets, musty floral furniture, and all the pungent flavored aromas you find on crotchety old people. The scent of rot was only an afterthought. You play by the rules or you lose your anchor. Do you know what happens to ships that lose their anchors? Fear dawned on the peeling folds of her face. They get lost in the ocean. She had settled into a frigid couch. Her spines had begun to sag back down into place. Good. You're going to be relocated then, placed on the shelf at a local thrift store. You're going to sign a contract with me, bound in your blood. You're not going to hurt another living soul. All you did was torment in life, even in death. That ends now, here. The next person who picks you up will find that their luck has changed for the better. Maybe their missing car keys turn up on the stairs. Maybe they find an extra 20 in their coat pocket. I could see the rise of disgust, of inconvenience in her eyes. She delighted in herself. She'd always made things about her. I knew the type well. You have too much connection to your son. Can't have you going back there. I don't want you in my shop either, so it's either the acid, the untethering, and the black void can have you. Or you live out with your tether item in peace, playing nice. She considered. Her mouth split at the cracks as she twisted her mauve hypodermic teeth around.
I'll take servitude.
I clapped my hands together. Wonderful choice. Let me grab my paperwork. I got up to move but stopped myself. I slid back down for a moment, and my eyes met hers. Oh. If you are thinking about breaking this little contract, I want you to consider something. If you haunt again, if you cause malice again, you will find yourself back in my shop one day. Maybe the same owner. Maybe 3 owners from now. You'll find yourself back here. Your kind always does. I saw the tremble rising in her gnarled hands, fingers like sharp tree roots. I saw the realization in her eyes. If that happens, your tether won't go into the acid. You won't stay in my shop. I set the contract down, wheeled around, and began clicking the dial on my gun safe open. I could feel the burn of her inquisitive stare. I teetered it open with a groan. The sound of countless overlapping screams filled the room, pained beyond recognition. The sound of eons of agony, eternities of suffering. Several objects rested in the safe. I flipped around. There was terror in her eyes now. A smaller predator staring down a much larger one. You will go in here forever. No autonomy, no free will. Just pain. Of the spiritual kind. Of the physical kind. Of the biblical kind. Nothing but unbridled fear in her now. Her whole body rocked with it. Its malformed head slowly worked back and forth. Needless to say, she signed the contract, and I haven't seen her since. Or her son again, for that matter. You might be wondering about some of those screaming things in the safe. There are some objects, some tethered, that I cannot in good conscience release back into the public. Some things I can't even keep around in my store. Dangerous things. Things even I am afraid of. It started again, in some other wrinkle of time, with the jingle of a bell above my peeling white door. I felt it before he even came in. I saw it immediately in his black eyes, a man oozing with possession, something I had never encountered before. A living being had become the anchor object, and the thing that writhed its way into my shop behind him made even me swallow my tongue in fear. It was a roiling black pulse of static. It chittered like 1,000 cicadas. The world was alive with the sound of it, of something so wrong, so vile, it had somehow broken the rules, my rules. The feeling of deep sorrow came next, crashing into me like waves against a cliff. Some of these spirits, I can see their stories played out like a projection. Crackled edges, dull colors, but the picture is visible. As I stared into the crackling black mass, the visions overcame me. Women with wrists bound in copper wire, down to the bone. I watched deft hands douse the screaming women in kerosene, laughing like it was the funniest thing it had ever seen. A rough, calloused thumb flicked the lighter on and off, taunting. The 4 women were stylized in 80s fashion, at least as far as I could tell, beneath all the blood. It didn't take long for him to flick the lighter forward. The women were consumed in a storm of fire. I tasted the acrid sizzle of their flesh. I could hear the way their hair and skin bubbled and popped in the fire. When they subsided, the visions, I heard it then. How my shop was alive with the devilish cries of tens of victims, the unfortunate prey of a serial killer, the presence hovering like black mist in my shop. Something darker than the darkest thundercloud. Its static body crackled and pulsed with ozone electricity. It had real weight and power behind it. I told you these things come to my shop with intention. That usually means the intention of victims. But in this case, in this solitary case, the rules had been turned on their head. This monster had come, had brought itself to me with a living host, out of intention. I knew I'd find it. Somehow, these seething darknesses always arrive at my doorstep. I knew it was only a matter of time. It wanted to take control. It wanted to present itself with a choice. Wanted me to make the choice this time. This mass-murdering spirit had been born something black and strong. It didn't speak. Maybe it couldn't speak. But I knew the choices like an old song stuck in the back of my mind. I could choose to let it go, and it would break away from its innocent anchor being, latch onto something immaterial, and haunt the earth like a locust swarm of consumption. Or I could kill its anchor point, harvest the skull from this innocent man's corpse, and gain control. But I would lose some of myself in the process. I thumbed a 9mm bullet into a revolver I kept in the drawer beneath the register. I pointed it at the man's chest. His eyes were hollow black orbs, but I could see the gentle cresting lines of humanity in his face. The laugh lines, the crow's feet. I couldn't think about the fact that he had a wife and daughter at home. This entity, this black void, laughed in a sound like shifting tectonic plates. The cicada buzz grew louder. It allowed me to visualize all this man stood to lose. It wanted this decision to hurt. It succeeded. I pulled the trigger, and the bullet shot through his chest. The man's back exploded outward behind him like a lit firecracker dropped in water. A spray of blood coated the carpet and walls. Oh, how the entity laughed. Oh, how I died a little inside. It had attached to his skull somehow, and the whole night it took me to cleave the man's head apart. For days, the carrion beetles I purchased ate away at the flesh stuck in all the little crevices of his skull. I made the rest of his body disappear. I cleaned up the sticky pools of blood. That oppressive cloud of static never left my side, never stopped writhing with glee in the corner of my shop. I didn't care that it would be imprisoned in eternities of agony, because it was going to make me pay dearly for the opportunity. I was more than glad when I finally stowed away the yellowing skull picked clean by beetles inside my safe. That entity was a serial murderer in life. In death, it was somehow worse. A roiling nightmare made manifest, and its entrapment inside the safe was a bittersweet one. I understood then how Zeus may have felt trapping the Titan Prometheus. In the end, I stopped it for good, but ultimately, it had won. And I knew it. It had cracked my facade. It had taken a piece of me with it into the black pocket dimension of the gun safe. But having that type of evil out in the world, it's what causes wars, famine, mass violence. We all like to play around with hypotheticals. I had to make that choice. One soul to save thousands. A choice I'd pick every time. That's one I don't like to talk about, but I guess I just needed to get it off my chest. A choice like that cuts deep, even for someone who's lived as many centuries as I have. But there are other things that don't belong in my shop. Ones I don't leave out on display, that I don't stow away, dip in acid, or donate to a thrift store. Ones that don't belong anywhere in our world anymore, that don't deserve to be untethered either. That crooked bell above my door jingled and chimed. Another time, another place. A young girl entered. Unusual, but not unheard of. She carried an old fire truck in her hand, well worn with hours of play. Small chips of paint showed in the grooves of the plastic. She stood on her tiptoes and placed it on the countertop. Her eyes were cloudy, far away. She had a blue backpack strung across her back. The straps ran down like suspenders across her small shoulders. "Ah, I was wondering when you'd show up." A small smile graced her lips. "You have a little clinger, don't you? The fee is 12 cents for you." She nodded her head, small locks of hair drifting into her eyes. Then she reached into the pocket of her dress and produced 2 dull copper pennies and a dime. She set them on the countertop. 12 cents, an exceedingly small price for peace. "Thank you so much, little miss. Now, where is he then?" I asked softly. She giggled slightly, eyes still distant. She took off the blue backpack and set it on the floor in front of her. Then she took 2 steps back. Nothing happened for a few breaths. We both waited. Finally, a small blue hand extended from the folds of the backpack. 2 small legs pressed out of the fabric. A small, pale blue face peeked out. The backpack enveloped his small frame like a tortoise shell. "There's the little guy," I said cheerfully. He looked close to bursting with tears. So much fear humming around in such a little body. A clear picture painted itself in the space behind him. An almost vision. Small grasping hands pulling on an unsecured shelf. A teetering behemoth that came falling down with a creak that sounded more like a sigh. Then there was a crash. His skull was crushed instantly by the heavy oak shelves. I took solace only in the fact that the death was quick. "You met such a violent and tragic end. Such a bad accident. I'm so sorry." He peeked out a little further. I saw tears welling in his eyes. Small, grasping fingers reached backwards out towards his sister. He began to cry. The sound was high, like the babble of a brook. "Oh, I know, little one. You've been so lost since you passed. It must be beyond frightening, but your sister doesn't understand. She feels fear when you move her toys at night, when you rustle the skirt of her bed. I know all you are wanting is to be seen, and you are now. You're seen. I moved beyond the lip of the counter and pulled the lid off a jar as I passed by. I produced a small orange sucker and peeled the wrapper off. I handed it to the boy as I lifted him up in an embrace. I held him tight to my chest. His sister wavered slightly where she stood, like a drunkard in the alley behind a bar. I waved her away with a smile. She slipped back through the door with a jingle. As I held the child to my chest, the tears turned to quiet sobs. Most young spirits don't end up here, lost in my store. But it happens on occasion, just like any store. And between you and me, these are the moments I value the most. I adore these brief moments where I don't have to prattle on about contracts or threaten or bind wicked spirits. As I held him closer to my chest, the impossibly small weight of his odd blue form, I noticed the deep bluish-black hue of his skin had begun shifting to a lighter tone, softening into a warmer shade of cyan, like the shallows of a warm ocean beach. I moved into my back room and slipped open the door of a rickety old dumbwaiter. I slid the infant inside. He was smiling now, arms extended further, less fear in his eyes. A weary understanding had formed in his tiny blue face, the outlines of comprehension, of peace. I slid the fire truck in and closed the door after him. He was clapping his hands together now, burbling. The dumbwaiter disappeared above me, gone into an ethereal, swimming, bright sea I caught only glimmers of. I don't know where that path leads. I only know that it is bright and full of joy. A place so much better than here. I've given you 3 accounts already, stories from my past, and the echoes left behind certain spirits I crossed paths with. But I've said little about myself. Let me change that. You don't apply to be the keeper of this shop. This place is for the damned and the drifting. You're chosen, always near the end of the last keeper's life, when their time thins and yours begins. I was just a boy then, an orphan running wild through alleys, sometime in the early months of a bygone century. Plain enough, shaped by soot and hunger, by streets that didn't forgive, and by lies that kept me alive. My parents had died in a house fire years before. I couldn't tell you how old I was when it happened. Most memories from that time drift like ash, impossible to hold. That's how it gets after enough lifetimes. But I do remember her, being haunted in the blackened gap between a butcher's stall and a print shop that sold broadsheets. I had stolen a gold bracelet from a lady's reticule, one of those dainty mesh purses they wore wrapped around the wrist. My fingers had just curled around the ridged band when her husband caught sight of me. He reached. I bolted, the bracelet clenched tight in my palm. I darted across the cobbled lane. Carriages swayed past like barges in a current, wheels clapping the stone, hooves striking sparks close enough to singe my hair. I made it across by the skin of my teeth. The lady and her husband gave chase. He managed to cross. She did not. There is much I cannot recall from those days, as I said, but her death remains carved sharp in my mind. A broad-chested draught horse struck her down, one of a matched pair. Its tack jolted, and the traces went taut as the beast reared. A hoof crushed her ribs with a noise like snapping green wood. The driver hauled at the reins, trying to pull the team too, but one of the wheels, a great oak thing banded in iron, rolled straight over her shoulder. She lay there in the street muck, her yellow float dress soaked up in filth and blood, spreading around her like spilled dye. She was still breathing, or trying to. Each breath came wet and slow, like water choking through a blocked drain. Her whole body shuddered with it. Her eyes locked on mine, raw and red-rimmed, wide and furious. All the softness was gone. I saw nothing but rage. I have never forgotten it. Her husband no longer looked at me, not the thief, not the boy, not the life I had taken. Only her. That night, I settled into my fortress of broken wooden crates and filth-slick cobbles, curled in on myself, wrapped in strips of foul cloth scavenged from the gutters. My fingers ran over the ridges of the gold bracelet again and again, close to wearing a hole straight through the metal. The air stank of old butcher's leavings, of offal and pork gut left too long in the sun. It was the usual perfume of that alley, and miasma that coated the tongue like grease and never quite let go. I fell into a shivering sleep, my eyes not yet free of the sight of that woman dying in the road. Because of me. A whisper filled the alley around me, a mournful song of a revenant drifting through the dark. It drew closer, and I pulled tighter into my makeshift nest. Footsteps followed, one dragged behind the other, catching now and then on the cobblestones. A slow and steady approach. I clenched my eyes shut, as if that might make it vanish, as if it might undo what I had done. I shivered from the cold, yes, but there was another chill, buried deeper in the bone. The humming lingered just beyond the leaning wall of splintered crates and rotting boards that I called home. The footsteps stopped outside the small flap I used as a door. Something knelt. Joints cracked in a flurry, sharp and sudden like firecrackers. I heard the flap lift, just a corner peeled back. Something leaned in, a mint fragrance, sharp and clean, floated over a heavier, metallic scent. Blood, real and present. Then came the breathing, slow and ragged. Each inhale caught on something jagged in the lungs. Each exhale shoved out with effort, thick and wet. She leaned in close. I opened my eyes and saw her. She still wore her fine jewelry, glittering at the throat and wrists, but her body was a ruin, a twisted amalgamation. Bones bent in every wrong direction, compound fractures jutting beneath the skin like thorns. Angular, impossible. Her form shifted as she stood. Soft bones ground against one another, twisting and churning like stone in a mortar bowl beneath the flowing folds of her dress, black and soaked through with darker red. Her eyes never wavered, two pools of milky white, threaded with vines of crimson, locked tight to mine. And from that day on, she was my shadow. Most cannot see the revenants that haunt them outright. They can usually only see their manifestations. I've always been different in that way. Perhaps that's why I was chosen to be a shopkeeper's apprentice. I tried to throw the bracelet away. I couldn't even sell it. No one would buy such a fine thing from a filthy street boy. They'd ask questions, call for the authorities. I flung it into the river more than once, and by morning light it would be there again, dripping wet, resting beside me. I wandered into the shop the same way all the customers do, unknowing, but with purpose, like sleepwalking. But for some reason, I woke up right there on the storefront floor, not bleary-eyed, not drifting in some unconscious tide. awake. An older gentleman named Remus stood waiting. His long gray beard was stained black at the corners of his mouth. He was the keeper before me. He had tended to the shop for centuries. He told me he saw a spark in my eye, a glimmer of the right kind of soul. He removed my haunting in exchange for a pledge that I would enter into tutelage under him. Remus pulled me from the depths of a sorrowful life, and I gave myself to the work, willingly, reverently, wholeheartedly, and I never looked back. At the end of his time, Remus was bound, as all keepers are, as I will be, to the totem buried in the space beneath the shop. Far below, in the clogged and stifling bowels of the place. Once he had taught me what he knew of quiet rituals, of binding and unbinding, of souls and tethers, the ins and outs of shopkeeping. He was given to the totem, his body unraveled, dissolving into a pool of black liquid, thick and still. His soul joined with the others. A sacred thing, long and weathered and older than memory. A stone rune marked with faint, glowing circles that shift slowly over time. Almost as if it breathes. Almost as if it's alive. You can commune with them, the spirits of all the caretakers past. They are intangible voices, but they hear. They are wizened. They are blooming with thought. And God, they can be a nuisance sometimes. It's like speaking with your uncles, parents, and grandparents all at once. They talk over one another. They debate. They hold grudges. It's tiring. But I have grown to love them like they were my family. I will be spending the rest of my eternities with them, after all. I am growing quite old now. Older than old. It is nearly time for me to find my own replacement. But I presume that is not why you came here. You came for stories of spirits, of bindings, and of ritual. I'll give you that, now that you've listened to my musings. My reflections of times gone to dust. You might have asked yourself one thing about these objects. Why don't I just hide them? I mentioned the bracelet earlier, how they always find their way back. Even destroying them doesn't work. Not really. Not unless you break them down to their atoms or dissolve them in acid. And I wouldn't recommend trying that yourself. There are spiritual threads that must be unwound with careful hands. Practiced hands. Failure to do so can lead to dire consequences. One gentleman I met had been a priest at a small countryside chapel. An anchor object found its way inside. He didn't know where it came from. I suspect the previous owner passed on and someone gifted through ancient ritual to the priest. A cruel but effective way to pass along a curse. It's one of the many unspoken rules in my line of work. The object was a small ornate jewelry chest with a patinaed brass latch. Carvings like rising tides were etched along the wood grain. Symbols he didn't recognize had been burned into the surface, curling and scaled like black snakes. He felt the wrongness immediately. He came to me for help, but not with the box. I was horrified to see what clambered in behind him. Dozens of them. An amalgamation of flapping appendages and slithering limbs. A crawling crowd of limbs as long as street poles, dragging itself through my doorway like the exhale of a tube of toothpaste. God's teeth, man. What happened? What did you do? I could sense it right away. many spirits stitched into one. The thing behind him rambled in 10 tongues, all spitting and biting at the air.
I destroyed their vessel,
he said.
The jewelry box. Incinerated it in an iron crucible. It could never come back. I broke into a steel mill to do the deed.
His voice was far away, like it was being spoken through layers of fog. You don't know what you've done, do you? He didn't answer. He just stood there, empty. The form behind him writhed, obscene, shifting in my storefront like something born of a fever dream. Out with you! I shouted. Damned is the hubris on you. You knew it was the wrong thing to do. You could feel it. But you did it anyway, I snapped, jabbing a finger at my own head. Man of God, I muttered, full of scorn. A poor decision from someone who should have known better, especially one who claimed to walk with divine light. There were dark entities latched to that anchor. Think of them like kites. He destroyed the anchor without cutting the strings. Now the strings had tangled and twisted, forming a single monstrous thing. It was a walking colony of souls, cursed to drift the world until the sun burns out. I couldn't help him. You cannot untie a knot when the anchor has already been obliterated. The man turned to go. I was furious, I won't lie. I don't make a habit of assaulting my customers, but I grabbed the nearest book and hurled it. It hit his back with a solid thump. He stumbled forward, turned. His face was blank and dazed. He looked like a dog drugged before surgery, confused and dim with dread. The entity could have followed anyone, but it followed him because he forced it to. Because he doomed them both. The torment was his to bear, a punishment well earned. Hubris carries a price, in life and in death, and when he finally passes, I suspect there will be a thing of teeth and rage waiting in the dark, salivating. There are people even I cannot help. Some lines once crossed cannot be uncrossed. And once that priest sheds his mortal coil, he will learn something his sermons never taught him. That when spiritual entities can touch your spiritual form, they can wound you in ways that can never heal. Claws and teeth can open flesh. They can spill blood, tear muscle, and leave behind scars. But a wound to the soul? That kind of pain lingers. That kind of rot spreads. That kind of tear doesn't close. It severs pieces of you, and those pieces never come back. As I sit here and ramble, reminiscing about older days, my cat Ramses purrs on my lap. He's not an ordinary cat. He's dead. A sphinx with a flair for dramatics. I found his collar stuffed in an envelope, shipped to my door. Usually objects like that are sent back unless they're sent to me, gifted intentionally. I have ways of returning spirits to the other side, not through the dumbwaiter I use for the lost souls of children, but through more deliberate, conscious means. Animal spirits don't appear often, less than any others, I'd say. Their minds tend to be simple, direct. Passing on is usually easy, painless. Even the stubborn ones eventually find their way across, but some need a little coaxing, a little bit of love. Ramses is different. If stubbornness were an Olympic sport, this feline would have taken the gold, silver, and bronze medals, then destroyed the podium, and eaten the medals. I tried to coax him into crossing on, but damn it, no matter what I tried, he always refuses. spirits can interact with objects in our plane with some measure of difficulty. It could be a howling specter flapping open the door to your closet. It could be the depression of unseen hands and knees on the fabric of your bed. For Ramses, it's knocking things off shelves, knocking over a glass of water I was just about to drink. For several years, he would scratch and yowl if I tried to touch him. He might be semi-incorporeal, but somehow those nails still find my skin, and damned if it doesn't hurt. But recently, and only recently, he has taken to climbing onto my lap and laying there. It's an odd sensation. He has a good amount of weight to him, even in death. We have a sort of no-touching policy. He will sit on my lap, but he will strike if a hand goes anywhere near him. I brought up Ramses to the totem that houses the spirits of the former shopkeepers. They chortled and laughed, offered such useful advice as, feed him a sprinkle of tuna and, damned if I know. Whatever was done to this poor beast must have been something awful. He carries it with him like he's dragging an iron barbell. The appearance of him scared me at first. The damage done to him in life had been so profound it broke even his spiritual form nearly beyond repair. An anomaly among the scant animal spirits I've encountered. Ramses is a thing plated in overlapping fish-like scales. He watches blankly behind unknowing eyes, slitted diagonally like a snake's. Puckered things, swollen from sockets high up on his head. Rows of mismatched, curved teeth fill his mouth. Hairless still, but decidedly more amphibious than he must have been in life. I offered him treats of the kind a spiritual being can taste. He offered me claws and teeth in return, then ate the treats once I'd retreated far enough away. I tried luring him with toys, ones he could touch and manipulate easily with his new form. But he simply stares at them from across the room, blinking one wet eye as slow as sin, then the other, always watching. If only I could understand what cavernous labyrinths spanned his mind. Maybe then I could crack the enigma of him. I'll be the first to admit I thought my work with Ramses had been a failure. In a way, I was right. But on another face of the same coin, I was wrong. Because I've now run into a different kind of issue. Every time I sit down, he climbs into my lap. No care, no warning, not even a hello. I purchased him a soft bed, yet he always chooses my lap. The bed has grown dusty and cobwebbed from his disuse. He has even started purring. I'm unsure if it's from comfort or simply the joy of ownership. Because make no mistake, I belong to him now. Despite being rough around the edges, I've fallen into a quiet rhythm with him as I sit behind the counter. I spin my yarns with Ramses during the quiet hours. He is bad at many things, but he is a dutiful listener. I often stay frozen with him perched on me like some kind of tamed iguana until my legs prickle with pins and needles. Because I've learned the wrath of a delapped Ramses is not something I would wish on my worst enemy. I would have thought the soul of a feline would be easier to work with than those of humans, or ancient things dormant in the earth. But this one is more pharaoh than cat, more titan than god. He's left his mark on everything, my shelves, my floors, the rhythm of my days. Even in death, he has found ways to make himself permanent. I see pieces of him in the air, feel him when the wind brushes past the threshold, and I've begun to fear something I never expected. That one day, I'll sit down, and he won't come. That I'll call out, and the shop will stay quiet. that I'll wake up and see that he's gone, that after all this time he has finally chosen to cross. And that day, when it comes, will break something in me that I don't think I'll be able to repair.